Today on Along for the Ride, you created the concept for this radio show.
I think you just spent all your time answering my questions and felt like maybe there's other uninformed fans who are out there married to deep Elvis fans, and so this might be helpful for them. They could even listen to this radio show and then act informed, with their Elvis fan if they wanted to.
Welcome to the Mystery Train Studios and the first episode of Along for the Ride. This is Ty, and I'm joined here with my bride, and today we'll be talking about Epic, Elvis Presley in concert, the documentary that's not a documentary, the concert film that's not a concert film. But whatever you call it, Epic is certainly the biggest Elvis event of a generation, at least.
I am not an Elvis fan, lifelong. I married one, so here we are. So I'm definitely along for the ride on this. I can be a passenger princess and ask all kinds of questions, which is exactly what I intend to do.
We saw Epic back on February 18th for the first time on the IMAX Early Access screening. And after we watched that, you had a question for me.
Just one?
Well, you had many, but the first one kind of opened up the others.
I believe one of my key questions was, who was that movie intended for?
Yes, that's the one I was thinking of. My reaction to that question was, well, it was intended more for the general public than for a deep Elvis fan like me.
And I respectfully disagreed with that. As someone who doesn't know the Elvis lore or facts or background or history or even songs, I was confused through much of the movie.
That leads to some of the other questions that you might have had. So now we're into April. So we saw the movie again yesterday. It was your second time seeing it and my sixth time seeing it. But there had been a gap for me between the fifth and the sixth time, which was nice because it kind of allowed me to somewhat experience it with fresher eyes than I had been. So I've seen it with just about all of my family. Anyway, what other questions do you have?
I do have a little notepad. I didn't put them in alphabetical order, but I think overall one of the main things that confused me a little bit about the movie is why did they not even reflect that he got a divorce? They talked a lot about love, and they used songs about love, and they did show footage of Lisa Marie, who was an absolutely adorable baby. And then they showed pictures with him and Priscilla, but then they never really tied it up. So for someone who's not a fan, I don't know why that was, in your opinion.
Right, and obviously I can only answer this with my opinion, but I think a couple of things happened there. One thing is the movie primarily takes footage from That's the Way It Is from 1970 and Elvis on Tour from 1972. They got separated in early 1972 officially. Their divorce wasn't finalized until 1973. So in a sense, the documentary sort of takes place prior to that.
Okay.
The other thing is they used the song Always on My Mind, which was sort of his apology song to her in the movie to kind of convey that, but I think it obviously it didn't hit well enough to realize that represented their breakup.
I thought they used that song in reference to the mom because they showed the picture of the mom and the dad in the audience during that song.
Different song.
Oh. What song was that?
They were using the song 20 Days and 20 Nights, which ends with I miss her, I miss her, I miss her.
Yeah, you're right.
Which in itself is an interesting song choice because that song is not about a mom. It's about a man that has left his wife, and after 20 days and 20 nights, he realizes he's made a mistake and he misses her.
Oh.
So they kind of used the line to fit with the Gladys Presley piece, but it really wasn't. Like, the song isn't really intended for that, but they kind of use it in the movie in that fashion. But going back to Always on My Mind, and you're right, an Elvis fan instantly knows Always on My Mind represents the breakup. But
How do you know that?
it's usually used, it's like in many documentaries, it's used as the breakup song. And
Okay.
and it came out during their separation.
Oh,
So
okay.
that kind of thing. Elvis tended to speak through his music and not so much. That goes back to the other reason why I don't think the divorce was noted in the movie is because there is no audio of Elvis talking about the divorce. So there's
Okay.
nothing you can really go to where he says anything about it. The only audio that even comes close to that is from a press conference for his Aloha from Hawaii show. Someone asked if marriage was in his future, which I thought was an odd question because he was not yet divorced, and he made a comment like it's very difficult to balance both a marriage and a career.
That is an odd question. And I noticed throughout the movie there was some odd questions throughout that came from different reporters
Right.
or even commentary, not from him but from others, where there was commentary. So one of the other things that really jumped out at me, speaking of commentary, at the very end of the movie, there's this very bizarre, I don't know, is it a poem? I'm not sure what it is. But you're sitting there, enjoying this movie, and then all of a sudden there's this voice that comes on and talks about, I believe, called Elvis White Trash, I believe, if I have the verbs right, the verbiage right. That was completely confusing and jarring to me. So, what was all that about?
So that, and I've seen a lot of commentary about this from my fellow fans, and I would tend to agree with them. That was a mistake, in my opinion. Baz Luhrmann used audio from Bono of the band U2, and it's a poem he wrote called American David, and it's really just an excerpt of it because parts of it is even potentially considered worse than what they aired in the movie.
No?
In any event, Bono is apparently an Elvis fan, but for whatever reason, that poem doesn't really hit right with. I'm not going to say all fans, but some fans didn't like that poem, and I agree with them. I felt like the movie should have ended right when the elevator closed instead of going to this poem by Bono. From what I've read online, apparently Luhrmann and Bono are friends to some degree. So, in a movie that you've established Elvis for the first time, really having his own voice and telling his story, to end it with Bono just doesn't compute for me either as a longer term fan. So I don't really have an answer as to why someone would do that. It doesn't obviously doesn't ruin the movie, which I thought was fantastic, but it does kind of like, why did they do that?
So, as again, an uninformed person, I would have probably started the movie with that because there were some things in there that, again, uninformed people have heard or maybe even think. So then you are starting with acknowledging some of those words, and then you're having Elvis tell his own story after that. So, but I also agree in the sense that they should have just ended the movie with the elevator because that was a powerful scene.
It really was.
It was just really powerful. And I'm not a director or any of those things, so I'm just a movie goer. But that was a really powerful scene, and you didn't need a lot of words. And that, again, is coming from someone who's not an Elvis connoisseur. There was some footage, I guess, of Elvis and some voiceover more from whomever talking about how he was inappropriate because he shook when he sang and stuff like that. And then there was some what appeared to be arrest footage. So they were almost implying he was arrested for, shaking while he danced on TV or something like that. It was really unclear. So what was going on there?
So that was early on in the movie, and actually the first time we saw it, I was very concerned when that happened because I thought, oh, here we go again, because Baz Luhrmann also did the 2022 Elvis biopic with starring Austin Butler, which had great casting and a lot of great. It was really a great movie in a lot of ways, but it also like veered off into fiction land quite often, probably a little more than I would have liked. I felt the same here in Epic, and this is really one of the spots that is also a detriment. So they show the Elvis Presley arrested thing, and you're right, they're highly implying it was due to his stage movements. In reality, that was an incident in Memphis in October of 1956. Basically, Elvis was at a gas station A lot of fans came up. They were blocking the pumps. The owner of the gas station and an employee, they all got in a scuffle with Elvis somehow. Punches were thrown. Not really going to get into the whole story. But all three of them were arrested, including Elvis. And then the next day, the judge dismissed the charges against Elvis and then fined the other two. So we'll just leave it at that. But it had nothing to do with the stage movements or anything, really. People that don't know that story walk away from Epic thinking, oh, Elvis was arrested for how he moved on stage. Certainly, it's just not the case.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely got that impression until afterwards when I could ask you for clarity because I wasn't sure what was going on there. And was that incident, the gas station incident, before or after the military? Do you happen to know?
That was before. So he went into the military in March of 1958. So it was a good year and a half before that.
Okay. The other thing that was interesting to me is I don't always know the voiceovers. I can tell Elvis's voice, but then there's these other people throughout the movie, and I don't always know who they are. But someone was talking about Elvis's juvenile delinquent persona or influence, I guess, that he was putting out there. And then there was visually footage of him, which I assume was all movie footage, where he was getting in fights and, I don't know, some other footage where he just looked like he was being a quote-unquote bad influence. So what was that about? And I know Elvis did speak on it in the movie, but was there this perception that he was a bad influence? And was it because of the movies? Like, do you know anything about that perspective?
Yes, there definitely was a perception that Elvis specifically and rock and roll generally influenced teenagers to be juvenile delinquents. It's the music influencing people into doing things that they supposedly wouldn't have otherwise done. This argument continues to this day in a lot of ways. As far as this footage they were showing, you're right, those were actually from his early movies, all from the 1950s, in that portion of the movie. Specifically, King Creole, they were using a lot of footage from that, of him in a fight in King Creole.
Is that a movie, King Creole?
Yes, King Creole is a movie. That's a good point. That was his last movie before the Army, so it was his fourth movie overall, his last movie before he went into the Army. And then they also showed footage from Jailhouse Rock at that point on his third movie. You see a scene of him being whipped. I think it's in that same section.
It is.
So that's from Jailhouse Rock, where he plays a man that is sentenced to prison for getting into a fist fight and accidentally killing a guy, essentially.
Okay.
They also showed, I think in that scene, footage from Loving You, which was his second movie, which also had like fist fights in it, or at least one fist fight. A lot of Elvis movies, even in the 60s when he focused more on like family fare, they did tend to have some kind of fist fight in them. It was just the nature of his movies. So,
well, I do know he had made some kind of comment about the movies all felt the same, like the scripts all felt the same. So maybe that was just the rinse and repeat kind of script they had for him. Put a fist fight in there, put a girl interest in there, put him in there shirtless. Like just kind of the model that they found worked from an audience perspective.
You've pretty much just described the Elvis movie formula in a nutshell right there.
Which, for the record, I don't think I've seen any Elvis movies other than Baz Luhrmann's one we just went, and then the Austin Butler one that he did.
And so we have not watched any of Elvis's like fictional narrative type movies. We did watch the original Elvis That's the Way It Is documentary together before we saw Epic. For Elvis fans that are in the know, it's a cut that I did that takes out the fan comments. So it was a cleaner cut then, because you were all thinking you made her suffer through those fan comments. But no, I took out the talking heads. For various reasons, I like that cut slightly better than the special edition. But we'll get into that in some future time.
The other thing that I was trying to understand, so there was some implication about Elvis's love life, or having like a multiple girlfriends, or like all these women, and then they showed visually some like pictures back to back of him with women. I wasn't clear, were those real life girlfriends, were those just cuts from a movie, like what what was going on there.
So I think the segment you're talking about is when he's singing Girls, Girls, Girls.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I believe all of the footage you're seeing from that are actually from his movies. So it's
Mm-hmm.
him with his co-stars. However, the answer to your question is still yes, they were probably his girlfriends at the time.
Oh, okay.
As he made each movie. It was
Okay.
just, I don't like to dive too much into his personal life, but my understanding is, yes, they were probably his girlfriends at the time. But the footage you were seeing is from the movies, not,
Okay.
so it
Okay.
wasn't like behind the scenes. There's another piece of footage that I haven't figured out entirely yet, and maybe someone out there knows, but it's either right at the beginning of, I think it's right before they play Always on My Mind. There's footage of him sitting next to a girl and they're driving and it's like shot from behind. And I'm not sure if they're in a Jeep or what, but it's from behind. And it looks like it could be from the movie Stay Away Joe, possibly, but I'm not entirely sure as I haven't watched Stay Away Joe in a long time because it's a difficult watch to be frank, even among Elvis movies. So it might be from that, I don't know if it's behind the scenes from that, or it may be something else entirely. So I haven't seen anything online about that particular piece. I think once Epic comes to like home media and people are able to analyze it even more, I think we'll start to see a lot more out there of what each piece of footage is.
So the other thing I wondered about. So obviously I saw that other movie that starred Austin Butler
Right.
with you, and Colonel, played by Tom Hanks, had
Yes.
quite a prominent role in that movie. And again, as a non-Elvis fan, I really walked away from that movie saying, wow, Colonel seems like a real jerk. And so then we have this movie where they were playing some kind of, the lyrics I know were Devil in Disguise, and they were showing
Yes.
Colonel. So what was really Colonel's role in Elvis's drug use? Because that's one of the things I've wondered, like, was Colonel the impetus for that? Did he try to, encourage him to take drugs? Like, what is Colonel's role in all that?
Well, that is a pretty deep subject and question, so I will try to hit it at a very high level. We could spend quite some time on that. So you're right. The Austin Butler Elvis movie, there is a scene or two in there where it's implied that Parker is pretty directly involved in it. It has him either phoning or having someone else phone Dr. Nick, who was Elvis's personal physician and provided a lot of the prescription medication. From my understanding, Parker stayed out of all of that. He kind of let Elvis do his own thing, more or less, in his personal life, especially when it came to that. Now, could he have indirectly influenced Elvis to abuse his medication due to how he was managing Elvis's career and how he managed Elvis in general? I think there's some possible link there, but I don't. It's not as direct as what was portrayed in the Elvis movie. And as far as in Epic, I don't know that Epic implied that I recall, but
No.
now it certainly took a heavy hand against Parker. I mean, there's a scene they show from the movie Charo where this guy's got a shotgun or a rifle to Elvis's neck, and that's right when they start talking about Colonel Parker. I mean, the visuals there are very, very symbolic.
There's a particular visual. It's a stage scene. So Elvis is on the stage, and I think he's leaning down to either shake a hand or kiss a fan or something like that. And then Colonel's kind of right there in that same general area. And they used special lighting to, like, illuminate Colonel Parker, and he had this look on his face that was just not very loving or encouraging. And so I was piecing together the Devil in Disguise lyrics, some of the visual aids they used, and really wondering why Elvis worked with Colonel Parker. And then why is he called Colonel? Was he a colonel from a military perspective? And if so, why is he rolling with Elvis if he's a colonel in the military?
All right, so there's a lot to unpack there. Why was Elvis with the Colonel? When Elvis was first coming up as a singer in the 1950s, he was originally on the Sun recording label. He was managed by actually different people over time, and I won't get into all of that. But at some point, he caught Parker's eye. He kind of essentially weaseled his way slowly into Elvis's life because he saw the potential for what Elvis could deliver, and he did in fact get Elvis off of the Sun label and onto RCA, which was a more nationally known and nationally distributed label, which did get Elvis more recognition at a broader level than he had at Sun at that time. And then he also, brilliantly got Elvis on TV in the early days of TV, and that also helped establish Elvis. He did 6 shows on the Dorsey Brothers stage show, which was produced by Jackie Gleason.
Oh, I know Jackie Gleason.
Yeah.
Honeymooners, right?
Right, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So Elvis was on there for 6 episodes. He performed, I think, about 2 songs per show. And then he performed on various other shows, the Milton Berle Show, the Steve Allen Show, and eventually the Ed Sullivan Show, which was the show to be on back then. So that was the crown jewel. Essentially, Elvis established, with Parker's help, his success especially during that year, 1956. And then Parker also made another of Elvis's dreams come true, which was he got him in the movies. Now, maybe these weren't the movies Elvis dreamed of making, but he did get him in the movies.
Lots of them, too.
And yeah, he ended up making 31 narrative type movies and then 2 documentaries. So that also happened in 1956. So a whole lot of things happened. So jumping ahead a couple of years, while Elvis was in the Army, Parker stayed back in the United States and kind of kept things going. He kept singles that they had in reserve coming out and kind of helped to keep his name out there. But why did he stay with Parker after that? As things, like, he wasn't satisfied creatively. He kept getting signed up for these movies. That's a question for the ages. It's probably not one I'll be able to answer, to be honest with you. Elvis fans have pondered this for decades as to why he stayed with him. I guess I would come back to a misplaced sense of loyalty. I also think, weirdly, that Elvis wrongly thought of Parker as his boss rather than really it was the other way around. So I almost think Elvis just went along with whatever Parker said to do. He didn't take the reins as often as he should have. When he did take the reins, things tended to go really well, but he just didn't do it often enough. By the time he was ready to fire Parker, he was too far in the abusive medication that you had talked about earlier. So he wasn't really able to push through that, and he didn't have the right, thanks to Parker, who kept him very isolated. He didn't have the right kind of people around him to help him navigate getting rid of Parker. So, but that's very much a high level look at. I mean, we could spend more time than I would want to spend, honestly, on Parker. Now, you also asked about the Colonel. I believe it was a West Virginia governor that conferred the honorary title of Colonel on Tom Parker. Parker used it, even though it was honorary. He used it.
Okay.
He was he did serve in the military at some point early during his time in the United States. He didn't rise to the rank of colonel, but oddly enough, Elvis was also made a colonel by the state of Tennessee.
Oh,
They
okay.
conferred on him the title of colonel. And obviously Elvis didn't use this title. I believe the colonel apparently made a joke that, well, now he would have to be the admiral because obviously he would need to outrank Elvis. So just that tells you right there that something was out of balance.
That's interesting. You mentioned a Dr. Nick. Was Dr. Nick in the movie Epic?
I don't believe Dr. Nick is shown in Epic. I don't recall seeing him that I know of.
Okay. Now, he was portrayed, obviously, in the Austin Butler movie.
He's at least referenced. I can't remember if they showed him or not. They may have shown him during one of the more upsetting scenes, but I can't remember if they specifically showed him or was it just a generic doctor. I don't remember. I did revisit the Austin Butler Elvis movie a few months ago, but I don't know, just that level of detail hasn't stuck with me.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll pause on the Dr. Nick thread and deal with that later.
Well, it looks like you still have a lot of questions there in your little notepad. We're just about out of time, though. We'll have to say to be continued. Thank you for joining us here on Along for the Ride. Until next time, if there is a next time, may God bless you.
See ya.